Hi, everyone. Just a quick reminder that if you enjoy What a Hell of a Way to Die, we have a Patreon page with bonus content dating all the way back to 2016. We put out bonus content weekly, and it's all available at the $5 tier. That's patreon.com/hell of a way to die. Thanks, and enjoy the show.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is me and it is Nate. Nate, it's officially fall now. We're deep inside of September, elbow deep as it were. And you know, have the leaves changed for you yet? Do you have trees in England? Is it just like a big flat piece of grass and racism? Like what do you got there looking forward to in fall?
The entirety of the English landscape is just the default background screen in Windows XP. It's just the green field with no trees. Actually, no. So the leaves have only started to kind of sort of change in some areas. You can see it beginning to happen. I mean, it's technically still summer. You know, we haven't had the equinox yet, but here, like, the weather's definitely cooled off. We're gonna have a weird sort of back to it being slightly warm in the next couple of days. It's actually supposed to be above 80 Fahrenheit, I think, next week one day. But like when I'm riding home at night, you can already kind of smell that like wet leaves smell. You know what I mean? The sort of like, fall is here kind of feeling. Yeah. And famously, I mean, Britain has lots of trees and lots of leaves. And the big conundrum is that despite, you know, this happening every year since trains were invented, the trains get completely fucked up by falling leaves on the tracks. Like it's a thing every year. The trains are always getting delayed because of leaves. It's just like, if only we had some way of predicting this. But yeah, I mean, so we will be neck deep in fall. I mean, like I said, I like the weather here by and large. It is really mild. It's not, you know, oppressive pretty much whenever. The thing that gets me is, of course, the darkness in wintertime. But I mean, there's not really much you can do about that. That's coming. It sucks. It sucks every year. But, you know, you just make the best of it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's always been, like, I get the seasonal affective depression. And it's like the only reason I'm into Christmas is like it's like that, you know, in the military it's false motivation. It's like, whatever, I'm just gonna fucking pretend that I'm in love with it, and maybe by some way it won't be hell. And like that's what Christmas is for me. February is like the worst month ever.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me with end of the year, Christmas, etc., is just, well, even if we don't celebrate Christmas, at least we can celebrate the solstice and be like, well, it's starting to get a little bit brighter. Like, it will stop getting darker, because that last couple of weeks before the solstice here is just, I want to say like 1 December, 2 December, the sun starts setting before 4 p.m. And so you have that 6-week period, basically, you know, December, end of November, beginning December and then the beginning of January, where, yeah, it just fucking sucks, man. It feels like a huge milestone when the sun is setting after 4 p.m. again, because it's just grim.
Seems unfair that they won't let you at least smoke weed in that big country. Just like something to get rid of the sadness. And it's like, well, you have a pub, go get drunk, I guess.
Go get drunk. Well, you can't now. We're going back to semi-lockdown, where you're not allowed to gather with more than 6 people. But apparently it doesn't affect work, because the virus doesn't discriminate as long as you're making money. Basically, the virus doesn't infect people as long as you're making money for Tory landlords. So you have to go to work, but you can't, and you have to go to the pub, but you can't gather at your house with more than 6 people. So yeah, usual nightmare stupidity. I think this country just got really lucky with a couple of inventions and the advent of just making tons of money off slavery. And it was just like the inertia from that one push that basically gave them the ability to take over the entire world. But as far as just like the normal day-to-day running of things, it's amazing to me that, you know, it's not just even more like Terry Gilliam's Brazil, where just like shit's exploding everywhere and everyone's just going about their business. Like, oh yeah, the automatic Internet of Things toaster just dumped tea all over my face and the toaster exploded, and my smart lock won't open. But whatever, muddle through, you know. It's just wild to me.
It reminds me, like, England is like in the beginning of 2001 Space Odyssey, when like there's this monolith and then one monkey realizes it can pick up a bone and beat another monkey to death with it. And it's like, and that's who gets to rule the world now. is just somebody who figured out you can bludgeon the other person to death with this rock. And that's, England had, like, they figured out doing armadas and a bunch of ships and going and gunpowder and everything. And it's like they're not like, culturally better or anything. They just have guns, and they brought guns to all these people who didn't have guns because they're like, the fuck do I need a gun for? Oh, I didn't realize a bunch of, tea sipping pale people would be angry and come here for my cinnamon and murder me. So,
well, hilariously, also, I mean, the British. If you're not familiar with the story, the British very much, I mean, destroyed all of the local manufacturing in India and sort of reorganized it along British factory lines. But India was at one point a huge chunk of world GDP, and then the British colonized it, and it is no longer. I mean, it's getting back to it, but it has to recover for 4 centuries of just being screwed over. But famously, what they did was they used they basically mass imported opium into China in order to build up money to like fund the colonial enterprises elsewhere. So we're talking, 6-7 generations ago, you had something far worse than the current U.S. opiate crisis. But instead of it being Purdue Pharma, it was another country's government basically doing it and strong-arming the local government into letting them do it so that they could make a shitload of money to fund their various other exploitative ventures elsewhere in the world. I mean, like, it's completely indefensible, and it really almost becomes like parodically, cartoonishly, stupidly bad, like to the point where it's so indefensible that you're like, how are there not war crimes trials for this? How are you not exhuming the bodies of the people who did this and decapitating them for the shit they did? But instead, like, not only is it treated as a benign thing in this country, it's really, there's a certain contingent of people who are like, we don't celebrate it enough. We taught those savages how to... we can't come up with the thing we supposedly taught them, but we apparently taught them some stuff. And also we built railroads, even though there's a lot about the railroads that it's just like they were just basically extraction trains. But hey,
my favorite thing is when a country that was colonized by England is like, hey, you have like some of our stuff in your museum that you stole from us and we want it back. And England's like, absolutely not. We're not going to do that. We didn't steal that. I mean, yes, we came uninvited and we took things, but it's an artifact now, so you wouldn't know what to do with it anyway. We've got it. If you want to come see, you come over here and we'll let you look at it. But we're not going to give that back.
In a way, the extent to which America is just like a much more rapacious and cruel and venal version of British capitalism strikes me as, because it's like British capitalism and the British sort of rentier class have this kind of false modesty about them. Like, oh, we really hate to do harm, but we require payments for everything, and we're going to charge rent on everything. And it's like, in America, they're just like, having rights is gay communism. You're going to die and you're going to like it. And that's just the unfiltered version of that same British impulse, if you will. So in a way, like, it won't be good for Britain if America just reverse colonizes it and American businesses just tear this country to shreds. But if it does happen for the thing about I'd say is that for the subset of the population that would be just rewards for aren't really going to be affected by it because they're rich assholes. So it sucks because if it does happen, it's not going to be good for anyone. It'll make everyone who's vulnerable's lives worse. That doesn't mean the concept isn't funny. It's just if it does happen, it'll be really bad. So we don't want that. But if it only happened to people in Britain of a certain class, then we would want it because it would be funny.
Well, we do love to see a bourgeoisie get their comeuppance, don't we?
Yes. But sadly, this doesn't seem to happen very often. We are not advocating the French solution, although it is attractive.
Look, I don't understand what it is about socialists and the guillotine. First off, most of us can't build a guillotine. Just get a gun. God damn, stop being weird about it. I love the French too, don't get me wrong. Anyway, before we start breaking any laws on this podcast, whether on purpose or inadvertently, let's jump into our topics today. The president has just been on one, it seems, with the military, insulting just everybody. And it's nothing new, right? Like, we know that he doesn't really give a fuck about the military beyond politics. We know that pretty much no politician gives a fuck about the military beyond politics. It's just Trump, like, has this weird ability to say exactly what he means, and then, like, everybody's just like, we have to be against that now, don't we? Much like, wandering around World War One cemetery and just being like, what was in it for them? Why did they do this? This is stupid. And in a way,
Very sad people, very big losers. They didn't get anything. Losers, all of them.
people like trash talk Donald Trump for dodging the draft for Vietnam, and it's like, this is the smartest fucking thing he's ever done.
I guessed it on a show recently, and I made that point that, like, I don't respect Donald Trump in the sense that he avoided Vietnam because he was a rich asshole for whom avoiding Vietnam was just a given. Obviously, it's the idea of I have to go to Vietnam because it's my patriotic duty is pretty shit, and I mean, a lot of people were forced into it, and but a lot of people who weren't rich, made sacrifices in their life to avoid it, and we respect that. Did Donald Trump notionally do the right thing by dodging the draft? Yes. But like I said, I mean, I knew somebody years ago whose dad got out of the draft literally because he had enough money to go to a psychologist, and the psychologist was just like, in 10 minutes, was like, oh, you joined a fraternity in college and then withdrew? Well, clearly you're not comfortable in homosocial environments, and therefore you wouldn't be a good fit in the military. All right, cool. Here's the note. Yeah, pay me up. I'm going to get you your draft deferment. Like, if you had money, you could do it. But I mean, if you didn't, by the time that your notice was up, if your first reaction to it was, hey, you've gotten the notice that's drafting you, then it was an uphill battle. And like, a lot of people didn't have a choice. And like I said, I mean, that could be the topic of a whole different episode. But I think the point being made here is Donald Trump sucks. Like, we don't have to defend him. But obviously, like, I think the biggest takeaway from the Donald Trump dodge the draft thing and the way that libs want to make that into some kind of an own is that if you go back into the 70s and 80s, a lot of people who are on the right and even people on the left would just be like, yeah, Vietnam was stupid. Why the fuck would I do that? That's dumb. That was a Marx game. Why would I go? And they only changed their tune, well, A, when Clinton became president or was a candidate, because he had dodged the draft, and so all of a sudden draft dodging was bad. And then B, after 9/11, when everything became the troops. So in a way, like, the reason why those people are all on record saying fuck going to Vietnam, why would I do that, was because that was not a particularly uncommon thing to say at the time. It's just that if you go back and you look at folks like Cheney or Wolfowitz or Ted Nugent or Trump or anybody along those lines, what you wind up finding is that it's so rooted in like classism, like, fuck those poors, they can fucking die all they want, I don't give a shit. Like, that to me, like I said, tells you a lot about why they didn't go, is because people of their class just didn't go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the rich people don't join. Well, if you're rich, why would you join the military? Like, no, the only reason for like well-off people to join the military is political aspirations. Anything else, like, look, I know we're gonna get somebody who's like, oh, but patriotic duty, fucking whatever. Congratulations, you're the one. You're the rube.
I mean, cool. Legitimately, if it's your patriotic duty, then yes, by all means do it. Make sure that you enlist before you go to college with no college credits. So you enlist as a buck private, and do not get any special exemptions. Do not get your parents or your family to give you money for a lawyer if you decide it's not for you and you want to buy your way out. Like, do it, deal with it, and be a private and suck shit. You know what I mean? Like, experience the thing that people who have no resources who join the military experience. Otherwise, fuck off. Like, it's just tourism. Like, go. I mean,
it's cool. Look, it's cool when everything sucks ass. It's being a private is awesome. It sucks, but like, once you are not a private and once you're out of all that, you're like, man, remember when like me and my buddies just sat around throwing rocks at other rocks to see who could get their rock closer to the big rock or get it into that can? Or remember that time we all just sat around smoking cigarettes and avoiding the sergeant? You can't get those stories if you're rich. What the fuck, man?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, when you go work at the spreadsheet factory in your upper middle class white collar job, you can at least be like, well, in the grand scheme of things, doing the spreadsheet is just a more technically advanced version of rubbing the same spot of my bolt carrier with the same dirty fucking rag for 2 hours when we were just doing mandatory weapons maintenance, where there was zero way that your weapon would be clean enough to be released because you were just being forcibly babysat. And yeah, a great introduction to how capitalism works.
Don't worry, Daddy will still be there to get you your management job at the dick sucking factory. But go out and suck some shit for a little bit. Like, the one thing that I always want to explain to people, like, now that I'm 37 and I'm old as shit, and I'm just getting older and closer to death, is that like your 20s don't really matter. Especially like the age between 20 and 25. Like, once you hit like 27, you should start kind of getting a plan together. But like when you're 20 years old, just go do weird stuff. Go, live in a house with like 3 other people. Go join the military. Go do any weird shit that you're always just like, man, I wonder what it would be like, other than, trying to figure it out. Like, oh, I got to go work at the spreadsheet factory because my dad said, I will respect rich people because in basic training we didn't have any rich people. At least nobody copped to it. We had a lot of criminals. We had a lot of people who a judge said it's this or prison, which is a weird part of our judicial system that I had no idea about. But apparently in some rural areas, but also in New York City, you have judges like that.
It is a thing that happens where basically at sentencing or in terms of the prosecution, they will prosecutors will give you will wind up producing stuff and basically saying if you join the military, then you won't be charged with a felony or whatever. You'll get a misdemeanor or something like that. It's not as common as I believe it used to be. But I met people when I was in the Army who at least that was their origin story. Was basically they were told and this was in places like Texas, Arizona, etc., that they could be granted some relief on the charging if they enlisted. And so in the same way that I had a soldier who later got kicked out of the military for being an alcoholic, had gotten a DUI in Arizona and crashed his car into a telephone pole and gotten $40,000 in fines. And so a recruiter told him, well, that DUI won't keep you out of the Army. And if you enlist airborne infantry, you'll get $45,000 in cash bonus. So he's like, cool, I'll enlist, pay off my fines. Anyway, he deployed to combat, came back, got drunk and beat up a cop and got kicked out of the Army. So
wow. Weird to think that there was probably something underlying there that maybe the military didn't solve and maybe made worse. I don't know. Maybe something that those prosecutors could go back and think about a little bit.
Yeah, but like anything in America, as long as it's not your problem anymore, what happens after the fact matters not to you. But bringing it back to Donald Trump, I guess got to say that I think that Trump's current thing is weird because his argument is basically, if you think I disrespect the troops, you're an idiot. The troops love me and I love them. I just hate military leaders. And that is, the thing about it is that I don't think the Dems, libs, etc. realize that that's not necessarily an incongruous argument. But I do also think it bears mention that over the course of the last 4-ish years, Trump's popularity with military, active duty military, etc., both enlisted and officer, has declined significantly. It's declined exceptionally with officers, I think, but even enlisted too. You're seeing, I think he's got a overall net disapproval, even with junior enlisted Marines, which is fucking saying something.
Yeah, the troops don't like him. I remember the troops saying, last time I was around active duty troops when I was in Colorado. And you get that, I don't like him, but he's letting us take the gloves off in Afghanistan. It's like, what do you think? You're going to fucking turn a corner now? Have you fought in Afghanistan?
We need to do some war crimes. We do some fucking war crimes, and then we'll win. Hell yeah, because that's why the Soviets won, because they took the gloves off, and they won the shit out of that. Soldiers are some of my favorite people because they just, nowhere else are you going to find the dumbest people in the world talking about, the most complicated things. I'm not joking that one time I was staying with a friend. I don't want to give away too much information here because I don't want to embarrass them, but my friend was at the time married to a Green Beret, and the Green Beret had a study, and I plugged my computer in when there was a spare power outlet there, and in amongst his books was Global Conflicts for Dummies. I was just like,
a bit on the nose there.
A bit on the nose, yeah. So, but I also agree with you, Francis, that nowhere on earth can you find a group of people able to live comfortably under the weight of so many internal contradictions as soldiers. Just unbelievable stuff, man.
I love us, man. We have superpowers. And I'm just trying to imagine Donald Trump as a private, bitching about the M1, the M16A1, complaining about the what is it, the 1113 and everything. It's not a good rifle, guys. The bullets they're giving us, this gunks everything up. I've got a guy. He's gonna send us some better bullets. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, Private Trump would have been hilarious, honestly. But I also realized too that so much of that stuff, I think, has just gotten, I don't know, you reckon that if Trump had been in the military, if he had gone through with getting drafted, he probably could have pulled strings to get sent to South Korea or Germany or something like that, where he didn't do anything, where he was Okinawa, etc. He'd be out of harm's way. Because, that was like Bush, George W. Bush, his whole thing was he served in the Air National Guard, which didn't deploy. So he did his military service, but he was a guardsman, and then when he got done, he was free. It wasn't like it was today, where the Guard absolutely fucking deploys to combat. In some cases, in the early part of Iraq and Afghanistan, they were deploying for longer stretches than active duty units were. There was a National Guard brigade from Iowa that was deployed to Iraq for, and I'm not joking, 18 months straight. That's why they wound up having to start putting in rules about it. But I mean, when they started extending brigades for 15 months instead of 12 months, active duty brigades, this would have been about 05, 06. People started to realize, like, hey, this is really bad. Like, actually, 15 months really psychologically destroys people more than 12. Actually, 12 is too long. You should do 9 instead. But yeah, in the early days of the war, man, the Guard, you were fuel for the fire, and they absolutely
you will
made
be
the most
federalized, bitch.
Yeah, and that's what happened, and it was gross, and so bringing it back, talking to Trump, that like, yeah, this Trump could have found a way out the way that Cheney did, which was, if I'm not mistaken, working in defense contracting. He was that was basically like considered essential worker, and he wasn't draftable. Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar and studied at Oxford, and basically he was out of the U.S. during that period, so he wasn't draftable.
Yeah, no nerds allowed.
Yeah, exactly. George W. Bush was in the Air National Guard. Ted Nugent, not a politician, but still a right-wing figure who loves war and apparently loves the troops, took a bunch of speed and shit himself during his his draft physical so that he would be kicked out.
There's conflicting reports on that, but I will say that I prefer to say that Ted Nugent shit himself at a recruiter's office. He's like, no, I didn't do that. He just did normal draft deferments to get out of it, but let's be honest. In its own, metaphorically, he shit his pants in front of a recruiter as well.
Like, you must imagine Sisyphus happy. You must imagine Ted Nugent shitting himself. It's not a satisfactory concept of that sort of boomer draft dodger to absolutely pro-murder fucking war hawk generational transformation if you cannot have the satisfaction of imagining him. And this is the thing he said he did. You cannot imagine him sitting in a recruiting office or a draft physical, shitting himself from too much amphetamines, and then 50 years later, 40 years later, whatever, he's like super gung-ho, hell yeah, send your kids to get fucking IED'd to pieces because that's America. I love eagles and shit. Like that boomer dichotomy of being one when it's your turn and another when it's anyone else's turn is so perfectly encapsulated by a thing that, once again, he said he did, that I feel like you must imagine it. You cannot refrain from imagining it. And even if Ted Nugent comes out and says, no, that's a lie, that was some shit I said, as a joke in rock music, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Once the idea has been spoken into the universe, the perfect circle of boomerdom has been created. You cannot look away.
It's it's the piss tape. It exists. It both exists and doesn't exist. It both did and didn't happen. And it doesn't matter that if it didn't happen, because we can all absolutely imagine Donald Trump hiring a bunch of prostitutes to urinate all over a bed that Barack Obama sat on, because he is at his heart a petty motherfucker. And that's why we love to hate him.
No, it's very true. It's very true. I mean, and so in that regard, going through this article, I feel like it's important to mention some of the stuff that Trump has actually said. Trump says, quote, "I'm not saying the military is in love with me. The soldiers are. The top people in the Pentagon probably aren't, because they want to do nothing but fight wars so that all those wonderful companies that make the bombs and make the planes and make everything else stay happy. We welcome anarchist at a demo who's 19 years old, Donald Trump." Which, I mean, he's not wrong, but it's just so
he's not right for the correct reasons. He's not saying these things because he's anti-war. He's saying them because I don't know. I don't know what his purpose is. Maybe he's trying to kiss the troops even harder than normal, but this isn't going to win you over anything. Like, you have the power to stop the wars and you don't. You exacerbate them, you make them worse. I mean, things in Yemen and Iraq and Afghanistan haven't exactly gotten any better. And it's just like, look, I killed that one guy with a drone strike. Don't you love me now? It's like, it's been 20 years, man. Just get everybody out. And to be fair, we're doing more drawdowns in Iraq, but also you've been president for 4 years. This should have been going on if you're anti-war. Like,
yeah,
it should be your day one shit, not your not the, okay, we're I'm in the run up to my reelection. Time to start, giving out free money and bringing the troops home finally.
Yeah, I want to read some of the paragraphs of this CNN article just because I feel like you can get a sense of how Trump's recent comments about, it was reported by Jeffrey Goldberg in The Atlantic. Jeffrey Goldberg, also known as the senior most concerned troll in all of American media. I do not like Jeffrey Goldberg for a variety of reasons, but obviously he feels as though he's got a real stinker here to make Trump look bad, a September surprise, if you will. But I don't feel, in my personal opinion, that this is any different than any of the other demeaning things Trump has said and done with regard to people that are supposedly sacrosanct. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't believe deep down that, that everything about military service is sacrosanct. And I think that, there's a lot of criticism to be made as to why people venerate folks like John McCain when, John McCain was a participant in a war of aggression that killed millions of innocent people, innocent, unconnected people that, completely just exposed the absolute moral rot of America's role in the world. And basically his take after that experience, and then after being made to be a prisoner of war and suffer physically for that, was to come back and be like, hell yeah, bomb Iran. So I don't like John McCain. I want to put that out there. But if Trump was going to sink for being a shithead about troops, veterans, prisoners of war, etc., it would have happened after he disparaged John McCain. It would have happened after he harassed the Hahn family.
The Khan family, yeah.
Exactly. Like, it would have happened after that. And the fact that it didn't happen shows you that there's a subset of the American population who just doesn't fucking care. And that all of the kind of pantomime, if you will, the pomp and circumstance about respecting our troops, like, that's all kind of put on. And the Democrats just fall for it. It's embarrassing. But ultimately, this is to end this sort of parenthetical segment here where I talk about my take. I just don't think that any of this really matters much to people who are going to vote for Trump anyway. But I'm going to read through this article really quickly to talk about Trump basically going full on, war is a racket, Smedley Butler, in order to explain this. All right, so a former senior administration official confirmed to CNN that Trump referred to fallen U.S. service members at the En Marne Cemetery in crude and derogatory terms following in November 2018 to France to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. Other outlets, including Fox News, have confirmed much of the Atlantic's reporting, which Trump and the White House vehemently deny. Some have expressed concern that the president's Monday accusations against the military's top brass could have a corrosive effect. Quote, the president's comments about the motivations of military leaders not only demeans their service and that of those they lead, he lends credence to the very disdain and thoughtlessness he tries to deny, unquote. Retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral and CNN analyst John Kirby said. Pause. Lol, Rear Admiral, deal with it. But, okay. Wait. Let's say something for a second. I recall very depressingly reporting in the Boston Globe, and I want to say 07 or 08, where it explained that something like 75 to 85% of general officers and flag grade officers in the Navy who had retired in that previous fiscal year had gone on to work as senior consultants and, more or less mascots for defense contractors. And it's pretty damning stuff. I mean, because a lot of those people double dip in the sense that they are on tap for the Pentagon to be used as what they call graybeards, which are senior retired generals who basically consult on everything from strategy and policy to appropriations and procurement. Now, here's the thing. In those procurement, strategy, et cetera things, there aren't defense contractors in those rooms. It's just military brass and the damn graybeards. However, these people are paid to represent Northrop Grumman, BAE Systems, Halliburton, the list goes on and on and on. And as a result, these people are basically both paid to shill and also in the room because supposedly they are above shilling. Now, you see the internal contradiction there. Well, this was reported, like I said, in 07, 08, I can't remember. And the thing that really blew my mind about it was that, it's shocking. But, it landed like a soap bubble popping in D.C. because everybody knows it. Everybody knows that's the racket. And so, like we said earlier, is Trump an idiot? Yes. Is he right for the wrong reasons? Yes. But is he kind of right? Well, yeah, he touches on something kind of important, which I hate having to say, but how much I here's the thing. Retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral and CNN analyst John Kirby, if he were not a CNN analyst, and by the way, CNN analysts make a fuckload of money, he would be probably representing, I don't know, DynCorp? You know what I'm saying? Like it, or whatever Fat Leonard fucking contracting company, the Navy uses. Like, the point being here that this is touching on something very real, which is that there is this perfect synthesis between senior brass, recently ex-senior brass, and the profit margins of defense contractors. Like, that is not a conspiracy theory.
I mean, Nate, our SecDef is a former Raytheon employee. I mean, it's very obvious. And so, again...
Our former Secretary of State was a fucking Exxon CEO. Like, yeah, like, they don't make it subtle. They were never all that subtle to begin with, but now it's just completely masked off. And I feel like, people... I remember when, in 2016, Benjamin Netanyahu won re-election. Well, rather, the Likud party under Netanyahu won re-election. And there was some commentary about some of the stuff that he did. Like, famously, he sent out robocalls, or the Likud party apparatus sent out robocalls to voters. And basically, it would tell people, the Muslim Barack Obama has told all the Arabs to vote for joint list. You need to go out and defend Israel. Like, it was not good stuff. And a commentator who was, at least I think, was somebody who reported on Israeli news and spoke Hebrew, but if not, was an American commentator, basically said, yeah, this is so fucked up. You can get away with anything in Israel. Like, this is the kind of shit that just wouldn't fly in America. Now, like I said, early 2016. Lol, what happened? We realized that actually being a horrible, shitty racist doesn't sink you. It really doesn't. There's an appetite for that amongst 40 to 50% of Americans. And I also think that Trump being a shithead to the military, like, I don't know, if people believe in you as like based God king who just makes his enemies uncomfortable, like basically humiliates the people he hates, I think they're going to look the other way, because honestly, that the troop embracing was only ever a cudgel to call the Democrats weak. That's all it ever was. Like, the people don't actually care. If they cared, sorry to sound like Daily Kos circa 2005, but if they cared, they wouldn't have settled for the horrible shit that people were experiencing when they were having to fucking hillbilly armor their goddamn Humvees and put sandbags and weld bullshit plates of whatever onto Humvees because they were getting obliterated into pieces in Iraq. They wouldn't have... Robert Gates wouldn't have had to basically fire the chief of the Air Force because the Air Force was like, no, we won't fly MRAPs to Iraq. That's a waste of our resources. Put them on boats. We only fly important cargo. Like, that mentality wouldn't have existed in the Air Force if there had been this notion that, like, folks are going to die. We don't give a shit. Profit margins, fiscal years, we're already doing after action reports to look for look past this war because it doesn't matter to us anymore, even though, at the time, hundreds of people were dying each week. Like, that mentality, what Trump is making fun of, like, it's true, it's real. It's just that, once again, Trump being correct, well, is the same phenomenon, in my opinion, as Steve Bannon being correct about what the actual threat profile of the Korean Peninsula is, which is to say, it's absurd to think it's going to kick off. It's just unbelievably unrealistic. This isn't going to happen. Like, you shouldn't get wound up. Now, fuck Bannon, but in that case, Bannon was correct. And similarly, fuck Trump. But in this case, Trump is touching on something accurate.
Yeah, and his followers are going to, it's not difficult for his followers to agree on something like that, because Trump is doing the I love the troops thing. I love the troops, but I hate the war, which is, the quote correct thing that you should be, saying if you're a Democrat or if you're a politician. I hate war. I don't want to do a war, but and I love them troops, and those people up at the top, they love to do war. They love to send our boys in to go get shot. And you're going to find a lot of his supporters do support that. I will say I've had the wind completely taken out of my sails before getting into an argument with somebody on Twitter and seeing there's some MAGA head and they've got pictures of Donald Trump shooting an Uzi on the back of an eagle or something, and you're just like, you have to respect me, I'm a troop. And they're just like, fuck you, troop, you're stupid, you're dumb for being a troop, don't be a troop. And I was like, shit, it's like my one Trump card, what the fuck am I going to do here? So it's not completely outside of the realm of possibility that a lot of his supporters kind of believe him or think the same thing. And again, it's just like maybe you join, as we say, hey, you join the army for multiple reasons. Sometimes it's, financial. Sometimes it's because you don't have any other options.
Or sounds interesting, and you've been raised in a culture that's told you from literally the moment you start to understand language that it's the most honorable thing you can do.
Right. But, it's also not difficult to completely switch that mentality around and just be like, look, I love you, troop, but you're stupid for joining the army and going and dying for these oil executives. And it's like, shit, I agree with that. If only you guys weren't also so like
turning into Daily Cost 2006 now.
I know. Hey, conservatives would be able to win more troops over if they weren't just like so painfully racist. But they can't excise that from them, while the Democrats can't stop kissing troops. So I don't know. It's a weird dichotomy going on here.
That thought has crossed my mind before when I've encountered people who were like, I would say, pretty racist libertarians, like not Republican levels of racism, but more along the lines of like they are firm believers in eugenics and racial superiority. So like in a way they're less own the libs racist and more like, secret Nazi citadel in my basement racist. But they're really into anti-war activism, and sometimes because, in the same way as like you're sort of the kind of 80s 90s pothead take, which is to say, with some truth, to say that pot can never be legal because you can't patent a plant, and so pharmaceutical companies can't make money off it. That was sort of an argument you used to hear. In the same way, these people are anti-war because they believe that it's all, like I said, it's all for profit, which a pretty big fucking chunk of it. But also, sometimes one of the arguments you'll hear from some of the more insane folks is that, like, well, we only fight wars because Israel tells us to, and so we have to, break their stranglehold on American government, which a bit uncomfortable for me. But you understand where I'm coming from. That, like, you'll find, whereas your garden variety Trump Bush conservative was like, hell yeah, send 300,000 troops to Iraq, annex Iraq, make it a fucking state. I don't give a shit. Ban Islam, kill everyone who's Muslim. Like, they'll go full on crazy. You'll still find people that have kind of Venn diagram overlap with Republican ideas on things who are actually pretty anti-war. Because a lot of times when you look at that sort of crazy, just really intensely eugenicist, racist, chauvinist, white supremacist view of the world, their argument is typically, like I said, you have the big anti-Semitism, Zionist conspiracy argument, which is to say that every war America fights in is because Israel has a make America go to war button that they press. There's also the argument that these people will make, and I want to specify this is incredibly racist, but they believe this, that there's no point in fighting those wars because those people are all savages and they don't deserve to live anyway. So why would we waste a single drop of American blood when we can, when they're not worth it? That's an argument that these people will make. And then thirdly, I think perhaps less commonly, but still out there, is the one that Trump is making, which is that we only go to war because we are interested in securing the profit margins and new exploration opportunities for oil companies and defense contractors. And so, none of this, all of the hype around this is a national emergency and this is protecting America's security is bullshit. And the thing about it is that third argument is the one that I feel like people can have some truck with. Obviously, the first two are completely insane and, I abhor them. But it's just weird to hear that coming from somebody like Trump, who is just, if you look at everything his government has done, it's like the novelty, oversized parody version of that level of institutional corruption and extractive industry and government being joined at the hip. You know what I mean?
You gotta watch out, when you're out there and you're talking to people and you're just like, man, I'm really anti-war. I hate war. And the guy sitting next to you is like, yeah, me too, man. War fucking sucks. I hate it. There's no reason for us to be wasting our time over there. And you're like, yeah, man. Hey, maybe I found a kindred spirit. Isn't it fucked up how these, these executives are making so much money off the back of dead Americans? And the other guy says, yeah, and those pesky Jews. And you're like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the damn New World Order and the fucking Zog. And you're like,
It's all Hitler down in the hollow earth. It's his fault. Like, oh, okay, but you like Hitler though. So
yeah, there was a video years ago by a guy who was this crazy redneck from Columbus, Georgia, who was basically going on this thing about like I was raised to hate black people and to believe that white supremacy is correct and default, and and I realized you're an idiot if you believe that shit because that's just meant to divide us. And I remember a lot of folks sharing this video very positively, enthusiastically, saying like, here's this guy who like he's not he's a dude who fixes washing machines for a living, and he's, incredibly like salt of the earth working class, and he's figured it out. So I was like, hell yeah, this is cool. I'm going to go watch this video. And I watched the full video, and he starts going on about how it's the globalists, with vaccines trying to control our brains and Soros's plan and shit. And it's just like, fuck, y'all shouldn't just cut that segment. Like, you know what I mean? It sucks because you're like, on one hand, it's correct, but then the overall picture that the person starts painting is one that's just as insanely conspiratorial and revolving around dehumanization as the first two arguments. Either the Jews did it or those people aren't human, they don't deserve protecting, even, assuming that the goal of American imperial occupations abroad is to protect anyone.
Look, I'm not going to say that, you should assume anybody recording a video in their car with a Southern accent is somebody you don't want to share, but I am going to say watch the whole video so you don't inadvertently, befall the milkshake duck prophecy.
Yeah, although sometimes they're good. Sometimes it's a guy talking about like, yep, was going to go for a bike ride today, but I got a job to come out here and get rid of this hornet's nest, so I'm going to film this, and y'all can take a look. I'm going to suck up all these goddamn hornets into a shop vac full of soapy water. Ain't one of these motherfuckers going to sting me. And sure enough, this guy just comes out there, just zaps this nest of hornets into a shop vac, and he's like, shit, I got done here faster than I thought I was going to. I might go back and do that bike ride anyway. And it's just like, who is this tour bike racing redneck who runs a hornet disposal business? Who is this guy? I like this guy. I want to hear more about him, unless he goes full weirdly racist, which he might. I don't know.
It could always happen, but a lot of times those guys like that will mostly keep it apolitical, and they just show you cool videos of like how they deal with bugs and stuff, and so I can learn if I ever have a hornet's nest. Now I know, shop vac with soapy water and just suck them all up into there.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I remember correctly, he came at them to begin with like some smoke or something like that, just to, like a stack of newspapers or something rolled up, either just set on fire or dipped in kerosene or something. But basically, like, he created some smoke to kind of slow them down because that'll do that. And then he just, basically hit him with the shop vac, and just the ones that were on the ground he sucked up, and then he just held the shop vac to the entrance of the nest and periodically tapped it as he was vacuuming. And so anytime any one of them tried to come out, they got sucked up in the thing, and they eventually just drowned because the shop the shop vacs, like, you can put the shop vac top onto a different container. You know what I'm talking about? Like, that's what he did. Yeah. And seemed like it worked. I mean, it certainly seemed like it worked better than trying to hit it with a fucking shotgun round or something like that. Just like it's
We love to see our people getting rid of hornets' nests both in correct and incorrect ways. Either one, it's like I'm gonna go deal with this hornet's nest, and it's like either this is going to be incredible and I'm going to learn something, and I'm going to learn you can use a shop vac and soapy water to take out a hornet's nest. Or I'm about to watch a man in a tank top and flip-flops hit a hornet's nest with a broomstick and almost die.
Yeah,
and either way, I'm excited about what I'm about to consume.
It's either premium dadcore DIY video or it's the Twitter account Perfectly Cut Screams. It cannot be anything else. But let me just bring it back to this Trump story because I want to read a couple more of these reactions, right? So Pentagon didn't respond. The Chief of Staff of the Army, General James McConville, declined to comment. But there was a statement made basically from the Pentagon. They says that I can assure the American people the senior leaders would only recommend sending our troops to combat when it's required in national security and the last resort. We take this very, very seriously in how we make our recommendations, and I think that's all I can really say on that. I feel very strongly about that.
I hope he wasn't in the military during 2003.
Yeah. McConville also noted that many of the top military leaders of the Pentagon have sons and daughters who have gone to combat or may be in combat right now. But here's the thing, right? Like, yeah, but are they enlisted? I mean, saying this as a former officer, are they also officers? Because this is a very different experience as an officer. Like, yeah, it still sucks, but like, it sucks a lot less. Sucks
And
a lot.
also, you can pick jobs that don't suck as much as an officer. You don't have to be an infantry officer. You don't have to be, an MP officer. You can go be logistics or something. You can do something that, and not to say this is not, again, we don't shit on any MOS. This is just to say there are some soldiers who spend their more time with their dicks in the dirt than others. I am one of those with the knot in the field for a reason, because the field sucks. You all talk about how much it sucks all the time. Why would I want to do it?
Yeah, that's very true. And so apparently, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows tried to walk the comments back. He said these comments are not directed specifically at them as much as it is we all know what happens in Washington, D.C. That comment was more directed about the military-industrial complex. Kind of a weird thing for a Republican White House Chief of Staff to be saying. But it just gets weirder and weirder. You know what I mean? Like, apparently, according to this article, relations between Mark Esper and Trump are tense. Trump's about to fire him, but Pentagon commanders, it says, are growing increasingly exhausted and worried about their relationship with the president. A critical area of concern is how the Pentagon would respond if Trump invokes the Insurrection Act to put U.S. military troops on the streets to deal with civilian protesters as he continues to stoke divisions across the country in the run-up to the election. Trump floated the idea last month, and after he first made the threat in June, Esper publicly broke with him by saying he opposed any such move. To avoid a new showdown with the White House, for the last several weeks, top military officials, including Milley, have been getting regular briefings on civil unrest in major cities across the country. The idea is to be ready with alternative plans for state-activated National Guard and other federal civilian law enforcement rather than have active duty troops potentially clash with protesters, according to several defense officials. Another issue that could lead to a clash between Trump and military leadership is the $740 billion defense bill that would strip the names of Confederate generals in the face of vocal opposition from Trump, who said he'd veto any move. The entire Joint Chiefs have made it clear they want to eliminate what they see as divisive symbols of the Confederacy. So yeah, long story short, this is not good, but I think that this article obviously is written from a very, very CNN centrist, center-righty framing. And I think it's very weird and unprecedented for us to see, the president clashing with the military, a Republican president clashing with the military in this way, certainly in a public way, as opposed to, like, say, what happened with Bush and Eric Shinseki, when Shinseki basically said the troop numbers were insufficient to invade Iraq, and so they immediately announced his successor just to be like, "You're a lame duck now, deal with it." So yeah, it's weird to see this conundrum in the public view, but I don't know, man. What do you think? It sucks. Like, I hate when Trump is right. But also, he's right for your wrong reasons, like you said.
Here's the thing. I don't believe anything that Trump ever says. I believe that he says things in a reactionary kind of way, where he is just saying the thing that he thinks is going to get that's going to get his base to like him. He doesn't I don't think that he believes these things. I'm sure that Trump has money in defense contractors. I'm sure that he makes money in one way or another off of these wars, just like all of these people do. And this is seriously somebody just pissed him off. So he's I just assume everybody above, I don't know, anybody who's a federal level politician and above, right? Like even your lowly, just little house of representative, the 535 people. If you're brand new, one of those, you probably got some skeletons in your closet, or you're about to get some. One way or another. I just assume it. And Trump is one of those people who knows everybody's skeletons. And so he's the guy who's just saying, who is doing this to just be like, "Oh, you don't want me to start talking. I'll start talking about how you do this and you do that. And I'll start, you guys do this and that." It's like, and we all know he's a huge hypocrite. We all know that he doesn't, in Trump Industries will hire contractors and not pay them and then just be like, "We'll bury you in lawsuits if you try to come after us with it. We've got the best lawyers and you're just going to waste money doing it. So just eat the loss." We know that he's incredibly sexist. We know that he's incredibly racist. We know all these things. And so what this is just another one of those weird dipshit reactions that just fires off in the back of his brain when he thinks people are pissing him off. So he tries to just goad them in some other way. If he was anti-war, he would have ended the fucking wars. If he was anti-war, he wouldn't have been bragging about, hitting a Syrian base with a bunch of missiles or dropping a Moab or anything like that, or killing General Qasim. There's nothing about him that is anti-war. He is just literally like this means nothing. This means absolutely nothing what he's saying. He is still the same complete dipshit asshole president that you've all grown to know and hate, and he will continue to be. And this is just him pissing off people who are telling him no. And because he's president, when he says something like this, everybody has to scramble, everybody has to deny, everybody has to sweat underneath the limelight, and people learn, don't fuck with the president, or at least don't fuck with this president, or at least they should be learning that. That's what he hopes that they would learn. So I wouldn't read too much into it. I don't really think that he gives a shit one way or another. Like, I fully believe that he would sit there and say, what the fuck was the point of us fighting in World War I? Because he's dumb, not because he's, some kind of intellectual like us who would say, why the fuck were we fighting in World War I, but we do it with a monocle and a pipe because, we have actual reasons why we would ask those questions. Like the Lusitania, it was actually hauling, weapons. We were lied to get into World War I. And I'm not going to go too far into that. Maybe I'll tap Joe for an episode on that one, but it's just, I don't know. I just don't read anything into it. You say I don't know because I don't want to agree with Trump. You're not agreeing with Trump because even if he's saying the same thing, like our hypothetical person at the bar who's saying, yeah, I'm anti-war too, they are there for the wrong reasons. They're there for reasons like, there's plenty of I think Jack Posobiec and maybe a couple of other of the more well-known Twitter right-wing grifters are also kind of a close every base overseas and bring everybody home. And like we say that because we shouldn't be meddling in the affairs of other countries, especially as far post-war as we are. They say it because they are white nationalists or they are American nationalists at worst. And so I say close military bases, but also we should be extending aid and helping out and doing things. We should be doing things that don't require us taking guns, basically. And their thing is bring everybody home because we need to defend, the motherland and make things, strong for wide-hipped white women to continue to pump out, babies in our glorious white revolution. So you can agree with people you can accidentally agree with people for reasons that are completely different. So don't worry about it. That's all. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, likewise. And you know what? In that regard, I feel like I would rather just talk about video games, which you managed to do for this week's bonus.
Heck yeah, me and Brock Wilbur. Brock sent me a message after the latest Call of Duty dropped with 4K resolution Ronald Reagan, where you can see every pore inside of that man's pockmarked face as he tells you to go out and do war crimes. So we talked about Call of Duty, and we talked about the war crimes of Call of Duty and how Call of Duty has gotten lamer, and that's just because of the writing and not because we're both old and have other things to do with our time other than play massive amounts of Call of Duty. So enjoy it. It is kind of fucked up because I do also remember in Modern Warfare 4, that's when, there's a lot of torture going on. And it's just assumed it's it's the good guys torturing the bad guys, so it's okay, right? And it's never really questioned or brought up again. And I don't know the relationship of the release of this and then the relationship of the release of the Abu Ghraib prison photos. But you would have right. thought that at some point in time you'd just be like, hey, maybe we don't have to have a torture scene, but it seems like they all have torture scenes. I haven't played them all, so maybe they don't all have torture.
Like early in the series, there's also one where you are interrogating somebody and you grab a bunch of broken glass off the ground and shove it into their mouth, and then you just repeatedly keep punching them in the mouth while they have glass in their mouth until they admit to something. And it's just what are you?
I'll tell you anything if you shove glass in my mouth and punch me in the face. I'll fucking convince to sink in the goddamn Titanic, man. We know that these things are not.
Wow, Francis, weird to hear from you, but yeah, I believe it.
And this is just that they're glorifying these things that we know doesn't work. We know it's not. The same thing with that Kiefer Sutherland fucking 24. He always got a torture.
Oh,
He's always got to
exactly.
torture somebody, to get the information to figure out, how to turn off the bomb. And we're just I don't know if video games make it this way or if just as a country who's been at war for, 10, 20 years, depending on when you're consuming this media, where you're just like, no, this is okay. This is what I expect out of the military, and this is what I expect out of my elected leaders, which I don't know. That feels just very American to me. It feels like that is...
Which I had the note in here because when 24 was on the air, 75 to 80% of Americans that watched 24 believed in waterboarding and any other form of torture to extract intelligence, that it was successful because that's what they'd been fed for 7, 8 seasons. And like everyone was just on board with it. And it remains one of those like stats that is permanently burned into my brain. It's like, oh, you watch Jack Bauer do it enough, and you're just like, yeah, it's fine if Dick Cheney does it. Which also, like, Modern Warfare 2 as a game, as part of the loading screens, contains like inspirational messages that are quotes from Dick Cheney, which you're just like, God, there's parts of this that I'm just like, if I was working there, I would go back and patch some things out just to try to like clean up the tiniest bit of like my fucking horrid history here. But no, they're still there. You can still see them.
And hey, it's a very pro-military. There's never any questioning, is what we're doing correct? There's never any, those things just don't come up. There's no reason for those things to come up because you're fighting the big bad. And, Modern Warfare.
And to tie it back into our Spec Ops The Line episode, there is, if you get a big enough kill streak in some of the Modern Warfare games of Call of Duty, the bonus you get is a white phosphorus drop, which for Spec Ops, as we cover in our episode, is supposed to be like this moment that you suddenly realize you've lost your fucking humanity and you have no fucking soul, and what have you done? And here it's just like, that's the bonus. Way to go. Way to get that kill streak up there, Banjo. Like, it's just fucking nonsense. Like, had the disconnect that exists even now.
And, but it's like, I understood everybody's like irritation with that. But also, one of the kill streaks is you get a radio car that you can drive around and blow people up with. One of them is you call in a Hind helicopter to just start mowing people down. One of them, if you get 25 kills, you can just drop a nuke on the whole map and murder everybody, including yourself. So the white phosphorus thing, and this is only in the multiplayer, the white phosphorus complaint really seems, because what it does is, in the game, it makes things really...
You see it as lesser in scale because everything else has become cartoonish at that point.
and to give people the idea of what white phosphorus is and isn't, depending on the amounts of white phosphorus is being used. And I am in no way saying, and this is why it's okay to use white phosphorus. Absolutely not. But you have to understand, white phosphorus is not an explosive. It's not something, it's usually, it should be used for concealment because it puts out a lot of smoke and a lot of acrid, acrid smoke and can be used for cover and concealment. If it gets on your skin, though, you're pretty much fucked. Like, there's really no way to get it off of your skin. It's just going to burn right on through your body. So, but it is also a directed, well, not necessarily directed, but, if you're near white phosphorus, you're like, oh, they drop white phosphorus a block away. I better, move this other direction. It's not like, a 500-pound bomb going off that levels 5 city blocks. So, in the game, yes, using white phosphorus, it's a kill streak thing. It can kill some of your bad guys. It makes it hard. Bad guys, the people you're playing against, because it is multi. Well, it's.
I was gonna say, I was waiting for you. I wanted to see where you were gonna fix it.
So, and again, this is, I don't remember any white phosphorus in the actual game, but it's just like a kill streak thing to be like, oh, you got 10 kills without dying. You get to make it harder for them to see for 15 seconds, and maybe you can get a couple more kills while everybody's disoriented. Like, and I get it, but also, like I said, you can literally nuke people. I think in the multiplayer, Modern Warfare 2 is the one that I played the most of. So you can do some real damage more damage with a nuclear detonation. But see, that's when it becomes cartoonish. It's like, oh, well, that's silly. Oh, a little radio controlled car that you can blow stuff up. Oh, a Pavlo, gunship coming in. White phosphorus, though. Ooh, that's a war crime. Like, motherfucker, have you seen the last 20 goddamn years? It's all been a war crime. Every bit of it. You do war crimes as soon as you show up with a 50 caliber machine gun in Karachi, Pakistan. That's a war crime. We shouldn't fucking be there. But, all that stuff kind of gets glossed over.
So I've always, as I've mentioned previously here, there is a huge fascination for me between the connects, the disconnects, between the military, video games, gamification of war, so on and so forth. And over the last decade or so, there have been just some exceptional titles. There was one game that was supposed to be made that was called 6 Days in Fallujah that was supposed to be a Spec Ops: The Line sort of thing that was based on the actual experiences of a team in Fallujah that was massacred, and that you were supposed to live it out. And like the widows and everybody signed off on it, and it was developed, and like everyone just sort of decided like, this is too much of a bummer. Game canceled. But Spec Ops came out the same year. And there is also a game that I hold near and dear to my heart at all times, which is the Blackwater branded video game that they released right after they decided to switch the name of Blackwater to something else so that it was no longer associated with it. But it is a playable experience where you and your other Blackwater friends work for Eric Prince. And it is genuinely just a war crime as a game. And like, when I show it to people, like I keep a physical copy of it around because if I don't see it, if I can't touch it, I don't believe that it exists still. And people are like, how is that? And the best part of it is that it was on the 360. And so at the top of it, it came out at a time that like games were called Better with Connect. And Better with Connect basically meant that you could yell grenade and like the Connect would hear you yell grenade and it would throw a grenade or whatever. So like Blackwater, Better with Connect, it's a game box that I have that is just like, wow, it is everything wrong with America in this thing that I got for $11 from GameStop.
It is unfortunate that this game did not bankrupt Eric Prince like Kurt Schilling's game bankrupted him.
Well, Kurt Schilling's game just got an anniversary release for $100 yesterday. So yes, as your listeners have said, they want to force me to play it. But also, there's a series of games called the Homefront games, which they hired on the Red Dawn screenwriter, along with a writer friend of mine that has worked on some other really fucking cool games. And they basically tried to make Red Dawn as a playable game in like 2013, 2015. And as they got near the end of it releasing, they were like, oh, hey, China can't be the bad guys. It's got to be North Korea because, like, Chinese money, am I right? And so, like, they fired the writers off of it because they were like, no, we're not going to make it North Korea because it doesn't make sense that North Korea could invade all of America. Like, do you know how many people are there? It doesn't track. And they're like, well, that is what it is, which I imagine has to be the experience of at least one person working on the new Top Gun movie that was paid for by Tencent, where all the American flag stuff has been taken out of it because China paid for Tom Cruise to make it.
All right, everybody. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for being Patreons if you are one. If not, and you want to get in on that bonus episode and a free bonus and one bonus episode every week, that is the $5 Patreon level, patreon.com/hellofawayti. We have a 1, a 3, a 5, a 10, and a 15 if you are one of those senior NCOs or senior officers who should be paying more money to begin with. So you can follow me at Army Strength, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. You can see writings and see our shop at hellofawaytodie.com. And I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yep, have a good one.